Dear students, good morning to you, and you're most welcome to this biology session. I am Christopher. I'll be teaching you biology this year. And on the slide or on the screen, you will see the topic of today's lesson. It is called Living World of Plants. தாவர உலகம். தாவரங்கள், இந்த உலகத்திலே நாம் பார்க்கக்கூடிய அநேக செடி கொடி மரங்கள். Living world of plants. And in these plants, in this world of plants, living world of plants, we'll be discussing about the plant physiology. Physio, function, logy, study. So study of functions is called physiology. Study of functions of plants is called plant physiology. In Tamil it is called தாவர செயலியல். தாவரத்தினுடைய செயல்பாடுகள், எப்படி இந்த தாவரங்கள் செயல்படுகிறது என்பதை குறித்து படிப்பதுதான் இந்த பாடம். Now, you would have studied in the lower classes the functions of plants. What are the functions of plants? Yes, you are correct. Photosynthesis, respiration, transpiration. These are the basic and vital functions of plants. What is photosynthesis? Photosynthesis, it's a very important process by which the plant synthesizes or manufactures its own food material with the help of raw materials like carbon dioxide, water, in the presence of sunlight, inside the chlorophyll, carbohydrates, glucose C6H12O6 is synthesized. And also there is a byproduct, a very important byproduct, and that byproduct is oxygen. It releases oxygen. You get oxygen during photosynthesis due to the photolysis of water. When water is split, you get protons and oxygen, and that oxygen, it goes as a gas, and it helps for all the living beings in respiration. So it helps in respiration. Oxygen is the main factor for respiration. And number two, respiration. What is respiration? See, the plants have synthesized glucose, and that glucose have to be broken down. So it has to be burned. When it is burned, it releases energy. That is the main product. And what are the byproducts? Carbon dioxide, water. So energy is released during respiration. So that carbohydrates or glucose is burned in the presence of oxygen. And what do you get? You get energy as the main product, and carbon dioxide as the byproduct. And the third important function is transpiration. What is transpiration? The excess amount of water escapes outside into the atmosphere from the aerial parts of the plant. What do you mean by aerial parts of the plant? Leaves. So through the leaves, water escapes as water vapor, and that process is called transpiration. So these are the three main functions. So there are lot of biological functions taking place inside a plant. So here in this chapter we'll be studying about some of the biological functions. And number one, what we are going to study is this: movements in plants. For example, Mimosa pudica. What is Mimosa pudica? You can see in the screen that plant. Total Siningi, touch me not plant. Now when you go and touch the plant, even if you give a small vibration to that plant, the leaves, they immediately close. What is the principle behind that? What is the principle behind the closing of the leaves immediately due to that stimuli, external stimuli? What do you mean by external stimuli? Veli thundugol. So, புறத்தூண்டலி நிமித்தம் அந்த செடி அதிலே சில அசைவுகள் காணப்படுகிறது, அல்லது தன்னிச்சையாக நகர்தல் அங்கே மேற்கொள்ளப்படுகிறது. What is that? Or what is the principle behind that? See, when you touch these leaves of Mimosa pudica, what happens? From the leaves, the water from the leaflets, it's a compound leaf, from the leaflets, the water, it moves to the pulvinus. Pulvinus is the base of the leaf. The base of the leaf is called leaf base, otherwise called pulvinus. So, the water, it moves to the pulvinus. And so that what happens? When the water, it moves out of the leaves, from the leaf cells, when the water moves out, the cell loses its turgidity. What do you mean by turgidity? It is because of a pressure called turgor pressure. Now, what do you mean by turgor pressure? When water enters into the vacuole of the cell, inside the cell you find a big vacuole, and that vacuole is filled with cell sap. What is that cell sap consists of? Salt, sugar. Both these salts and sugars are dissolved in water. That is called cell sap. So when water enters into the cell sap, the volume, it increases. When the volume increases, automatically a pressure is developed, and that pressure is called turgor pressure. This pressure, what it will do, it will make the plasma membrane to go and hit against the cell wall. When it goes and hits against the cell wall, or in other words, when it goes and pushes, when the plasma membrane goes and pushes the cell wall on the opposite direction, it develops an equal pressure. That's what we call wall pressure. So wall pressure is equal to turgor pressure. That is why the cells, they don't burst because of turgor pressure. When due to turgor pressure, the plasma membrane goes and pushes the cell wall. So what will happen? The cell wall will burst open, but it doesn't burst open. Why? Because the cell wall also develops equal pressure. We call it as wall pressure. That is why the cells are turgid, very rigid, very stiff. But when the water moves out, there is a loss in the turgor pressure. There is loss in that turgidity. So water, it escapes the leaf via pulvinus. Pulvinus is the leaf base. So when it loses The turgidity, what is the opposite of turgidity? Flaccidity. So, when there is turgidity, swelling. When it becomes flaccid, it shrinks. அப்படியே சுருங்கிரும். And after some time, again, when water enters into the leaf cells, it develops the turgor pressure, turgidity, and the leaves come to the same position. That is the principle behind Mimosa pudica or touch me not plant. And there is next plant, we call it as Elianthus annuvus. Elianthus annuvus. What is that? Sunflower. Listen. In this Elianthus annuvus, Suryagandhi and the Malar, what will happen here? The stalk of the Elianthus annuvus, it follows the path of the sun from dawn to dusk, that is from east to west. The stalk, that means pedicel, and the பூவுடைய காம்பு, it rotates according to the path of the sun. So, in Elianthus annuvus, அந்த தாவரத்தின் தண்டின் முனைப்பகுதி, அந்த முனையானது அப்படியே சூரியன் இருக்கும் திசையை நோக்கி நகர்ந்து கொண்டே இருக்கும். அப்படியே ரொட்டேட் ஆகிட்டே இருக்கும். எப்படி? ஃப்ரம் ஈஸ்ட் டு வெஸ்ட், கிழக்கிலிருந்து மேற்கு நோக்கி. And in the same time, during night time, it moves from the west to east. So it will be, in the morning it will be facing the sun. And as the sun, it moves. Of course, the sun doesn't move, it is there. And the earth only, it is rotating. Of course, we say for our convenience, the sun moves so that this sunflower also, the stalk of the sunflower also, accordingly, it moves, it rotates. That is why in the morning, if you see the sunflower, it will be facing the east, and in the evening you can see it will be facing the west. What is the reason behind that? That stalk, it rotates, it moves. And there is another plant, we call it as Desmodium gyrans. And this Desmodium gyrans is otherwise called Indian telegraphic plant. இந்திய தந்தி தாவரம். Now this leaves are mesmerizing. What do you mean by that? These leaves will be dancing, and when they due to that dancing nature, it is so beautiful to look at them. And actually all these movements are triggered by an external stimuli. வெளி தூண்டல், external stimulus. Listen. அப்ப இந்த இலைகள் காற்றினால் நடனமாடுவது, this plant, how does it having that dancing movement? How does it has the dancing movement? What they say about this Desmodium gyrans, there is swelling and shrinking of motor cells, mainly in the pulvini. What is pulvini? Pulvini is the plural for pulvinus. And what is pulvinus? It is the base of the leaf. Actually, this Desmodium gyrans is a compound leaf, so that you have three leaflets. At the base of the leaflets, you find the pulvinus. And due to the swelling and the shrinking of the motor cells, what are motor cells? They are otherwise called bulliform cells. What are bulliform cells? They are large bubble-shaped cells, mainly the epidermal cells. The leaves, they have an outermost protective covering, that outermost protective covering is called epidermal cells. And those epidermal cells are modified into large bubble-shaped structures. So they are called as bulliform cells, or otherwise called motor cells. What happens here in these leaflets of this Desmodium gyrans? When there is even a small vibration, even a butterfly comes and touches, those leaves will begin to dance. Mainly that is because of the swelling and the shrinking of the motor cells. See how the cells are swelled, or how the cells are swollen or bulged. That is due to the uptake of ions. Uptake of ions will lead to the cause of water influx. Water will move inside, so that, already I told you about Mimosa pudica, where I told about that turgidity. Due to the entry of water, the cells will swell, motor cells will swell or bulge. And when the ions, they leave from the cells, loss of ions will make the water efflux. What do you mean the water efflux? Water will move outside of the motor cells, and that will result in the shrinking of the cells. So these swelling and shrinking of motor cells, they bring about this movement in Desmodium gyrans. Listen carefully. This Desmodium gyrans, see, you can see that. As I told you, these movements are triggered by external stimulus. On the screen, you can see that plant. Next to that sunflower, you find this Desmodium gyrans. Now, this Desmodium gyrans, otherwise we call it as Indian telegraph plant. Indian Tandi Thavaram. The compound leaf, it has compound leaf means many leaves. Simple leaf means single leaf. Simple leaf, single leaf. Compound leaf means more than two leaves. So the compound leaf shows 3 leaflets. Those 3 leaflets, one terminal which is very large, and other 2, they are found in the sidewards. They are very small. We call them as lateral opposite leaflets. So these opposite leaflets means on that node you will find on either side 2 leaflets. That's what we call it as opposite leaflets. So the 2 lateral leaflets, they will move up and they move back and then move down and finally back to the original position. So that's like a rhythmic movement, just like a pulsating movement, similar to the beating of heart. So this is the movement, this rhythmic movement. Because of this rhythmic movement, this Desmodium gyrans is also called the dancing plant, because they move up, they move back, they move down, and they finally come to their original position. This is just like a rhythmic movement, similar to the beating of the heart. This plant was used by Indian scientist Jagadish Chandra Bose for his experiment. Who is Jagadish Chandra Bose? He was the one who proved plants have life. He was the man who invented crescograph. What is crescograph? It is a device for measuring the growth of plants. And there is an electric probe. It is connected to a galvanometer, and that electric probe is inserted into the inner cortex of the stem. And if you see on the galvanometer, it showed high electrical activity. That is also same to the beating of heart, rhythmic pulsating movement of the inner cortical cells, inner cortex. It's just like a pump. So the cells associated with xylem, they exhibited pumping action, so that resulted in the movement of water upwards. That's what we call it as ascent of sap. The upward movement of water against the downward pull of gravity is called ascent of sap. Of course, this or little information for you, nothing to worry. You will be studying all this in detail in +1. So I want to tell you this Jagadish Chandra Bose is an Indian scientist, our Indian scientist. In the year 1900, he only proved that plants have life, and he was the one who invented that crescograph device for measuring the growth of plants. So that's how that rhythmic movement is taking place in Desmodium gyrans, and it is in Tamil, or in Tamil we call it as Tholukanni. Desmodium gyrans, in the Tamil vernacular common name we call it as Tholukanni, and Mimosa podica is called as Thottal Surungi. I stop here and we will continue.